The signal came through at 0300 hours, cutting through the normal chatter of deep space like a knife through silk. Hana sat up straighter in her chair at the communication station, her coffee forgotten as she listened to the repeating message. It was desperate, it was alien, and it was asking for help. "Captain Minho," she said into her headset, trying to keep her voice steady. "You need to hear this." 5 minutes later, Captain Minho stood in the communications bay of the UESS Horizon, listening to the translated message play for the third time. The ship hummed around them, a comforting sound that had become home over the past 2 years of deep space exploration. Behind him, the rest of the senior crew filtered in, summoned from their bunks and duties. The voice was soft, musical, nothing like human speech. But the translation software turned it into words they could understand. "This is Threshold 7. We are under attack. The Krethax swarm has breached our defenses. The Coalition has abandoned us. If anyone can hear this, please. We are dying." The message looped again, then again. "Where did this come from?" Minho asked. He was a compact man with gray starting to show at his temples, a former Marine who had spent 20 years learning how to stay calm in bad situations. This was a bad situation. Hana pulled up a star chart. Outer Rim, about 8 days away at maximum jump speed. It's a colony world called Threshold 7, registered to a species called the Valori. And the Coalition? That was Dr. Yuna, the ship's medical officer and xenobiologist. She had arrived, still tying back her long black hair, her usual warm smile replaced by concern. "I picked up their military chatter too," Hana said quietly. "They tried a rescue mission 3 days ago. They failed. The planet's environmental conditions were too harsh for their ships and troops. They declared the colony a lost cause and withdrew." Lieutenant Taeyang, the youngest of the senior crew at 28, leaned over the console. His fingers flew across the display, pulling up data. "Too harsh how?" "Extreme gravity fluctuations, toxic atmosphere, temperature swings from -40 to +60 Celsius, constant seismic activity, heavy radiation from the local star." Hana read off the list with growing disbelief. "The Coalition commanders said the conditions made military operations impossible." There was a long silence. Then Sergeant Nari, who had been leaning against the wall with her arms crossed, started to laugh. It was a short, bitter sound. "Impossible," she said. "That's just Tuesday on Earth." Minho looked at his tactical officer. "Show me Earth's classification in the Galactic database." Taeyang pulled it up. The display showed Earth floating in space, blue and white and beautiful. Below it, red text flashed warnings. "Class 9 Death World. Hazardous environment. Extreme biodiversity. High gravity. Atmospheric toxins present. Radiation exposure risk. Tectonic instability. Unsuitable for colonization. We grew up on a world the galaxy thinks is a death trap," Yuna said softly. "What they're calling impossible conditions are normal for us," Minho finished. He turned to look at his crew. These were good people. He had handpicked every one of them for this mission. Hana, who could pull signals out of cosmic noise. Yuna, who saw connections others missed. Taeyang, whose tactical mind worked 3 steps ahead. Nari, who had dragged wounded soldiers through worse than this and kept them alive. And Hyun, his chief engineer, who had just arrived and was already studying the planet's specifications with professional interest. "We're not authorized for combat rescue operations," Minho said. It was his duty to say it, even though he already knew what he was going to do. "We're an exploration vessel." "Sir," Taeyang said carefully, "our weapons systems are fully functional. We have a full complement of Marines, and we're the closest Earth ship to their position. The Coalition has superior numbers and technology," Minho continued. "If they failed because they're soft," Nari interrupted. She pushed off from the wall, her Marine training showing in every movement. No offense to them, but they evolved on Paradise Worlds. They don't know how to fight in hell. She gestured at the planet Data. My grandmother lived through 3 typhoons, 2 earthquakes, and a wildfire. This Threshold 7 place? She'd call it camping weather. Hyun spoke up from where he was studying the Horizon's shield specifications. I can modify our atmospheric shields. The Coalition ships use standard crystal matrix technology. It's elegant but fragile. Our Earth-built shields are designed to punch through hurricanes and survive asteroid impacts. Give me 6 hours and I can get us through that atmosphere, no problem. Minho looked at each of them. He saw no fear. He saw no hesitation. He saw people who understood something the rest of the galaxy didn't. Surviving hard places was what humans did. It was bred into their bones, written into their genes, carved into their culture by a world that had never been gentle. Dr. Yuna, he said finally. Medical assessment. Can humans operate in those conditions? Yuna was already nodding. The temperature extremes are manageable with standard field gear. The gravity fluctuations will be uncomfortable, but nothing our bodies can't handle. The radiation levels are high, but not immediately lethal. The toxic atmosphere means sealed suits. But we train for that. She paused. Captain, every human on this ship has survived worse just by being born on Earth. Tactical assessment, Lieutenant. Taeyang pulled up tactical data on the Krethak swarm. They're a hive mind species. They hunt by overwhelming force and prey psychology. Their tactics assume their targets will panic and scatter. It's effective against peaceful species. His smile was sharp. They've never hunted something that hunts back. Minho turned to the viewport. Out there in the darkness, people were dying. The galaxy had decided they couldn't be saved. But the galaxy didn't know about Deathworlders. It didn't know what happened when humans decided that impossible was just another challenge to overcome. He thought about Earth, about humanity, clawing its way up from the mud, surviving ice ages and plagues and disasters that should have wiped them out, about every generation that looked at impossible odds and said, not today. That was the human legacy, not violence, not conquest, simple, stubborn survival. And helping others survive, too. Hyun, Minho said, you have 4 hours to modify those shields, not 6. Hana, send a response to that distress call. Tell them Deathworlders are coming. What should I say, sir? Hana asked. Minho smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a species that had survived everything their world threw at them and came out stronger. Tell them Earth heard their call. Tell them help is coming. And tell them to hold on, because humans don't know how to quit. As the crew scattered to their stations, Minho looked out at the stars. The Horizon's engines began to hum with power, building up for the jump that would take them to Threshold 7. Behind him, Nari was already briefing the Marines. Hyun was elbow-deep in the shield systems. Yuna was prepping Medical Bay for casualties. They were going into hell to pull strangers out of the fire. It was dangerous. It was reckless. It was against protocol. It was also the most human thing in the universe. The Horizon jumped into the darkness, racing toward a world the galaxy had abandoned. But Earth's children were coming. And Deathworlds didn't scare Deathworlders. The Horizon dropped out of jump space 8 days later, and Threshold 7 filled the view screen like a bruised jewel. The planet's atmosphere swirled with violent storms, purple and orange clouds churning in patterns that would tear apart most ships. Warning klaxons immediately began blaring across the bridge. Atmospheric pressure readings are all over the place, Taeyang reported, his fingers dancing across his console. Gravity wells shifting every few minutes. I'm reading temperature gradients that shouldn't be possible. The Coalition wasn't exaggerating, Hana said quietly. This place is genuinely awful. Minho watched the planet turn below them. Somewhere down there, people were hiding and dying while monsters hunted them. Status on the shields, Hyun? From engineering, Hyun's voice came back confident. Modifications are holding perfectly. The Coalition uses shields designed for elegance. Ours are designed for storms. We can make it through. Then take us down, Minho ordered. Punch through that atmosphere and find me those survivors. The horizon descended into hell. The ship bucked and shuddered as it hit the outer atmosphere. The storms battered against the shields, trying to tear them apart. Lightning arced across the hull, bright enough to blind. The gravity fluctuations made everyone's stomach lurch, pulling them one direction then another without warning. Through it all, the horizon kept pushing down, its Earth-built hull groaning but holding. "This is insane," Hana whispered, gripping her console as the ship dropped through another gravity well. "This is flying through a typhoon," Nari said from her station. She actually sounded relaxed. "I grew up on Jeju Island. This is nothing." 10 minutes of descent that felt like 10 hours. And then they were through. The horizon broke through the lowest cloud layer and emerged over a landscape of broken stone and twisted metal. What had once been a colony was now a battlefield. Buildings lay in ruins. Fires burned despite the toxic rain, and everywhere there were bodies. "Life signs," Taeyang said, his voice tight. "Reading approximately 8,000 survivors. They're concentrated in one location, an underground shelter complex, northwest of our position." "And the Krathax?" Minho asked. "Surrounding the shelter, thousands of them. They're preparing for a final assault." Taeyang looked up from his console, his young face grim. "Captain, if we don't move now, those people won't last another day. Take us down. Land between the survivors and the Krathax. Nari, get your Marines ready. Yuna, prep medical bay for incoming wounded. Everyone else, battle stations." The horizon settled onto the broken ground with a hiss of landing thrusters. The main airlock opened, and Nari led the first squad out into the toxic air, their sealed suits protecting them from the atmosphere that had stopped the Coalition forces. Behind them, Minho and Yuna followed, with Taeyang coordinating from the ship. The landscape was wrong in ways that were hard to describe. The gravity shifted as they walked, making each step unpredictable. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in as many seconds, then spiked back up. The ground trembled with constant small earthquakes. It was hostile and alien and dangerous. It was also manageable because humans had learned to live with danger. They reached the shelter entrance just as a door slid open. The being that emerged was like nothing they had ever seen. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, with skin that shimmered like pearl and eyes that were too large and too kind. She moved with impossible grace, even in this horrible place. Behind her, more of her kind peered out, their faces showing fear and desperate hope. "You came," the tall being said. Her voice was the same musical sound from the distress call. "When the Coalition left, we thought we would die here." She looked at the humans in their bulky suits, at the weapons they carried, at the ship behind them. "Who are you?" "Captain Minho of the Earthship Horizon," Minho said. "You called for help. We're here to provide it." "Earth?" The being's large eyes grew even wider. "The Death World? You're the Deathworlders?" She seemed shocked, almost frightened. Dr. Yuna stepped forward, her medical scanner already out. "We prefer humans. And yes, we're from Earth. My name is Yuna. I'm a doctor. Are you injured?" The tall being shook her head slowly. "I am Ambassador Lyra of the Valori. We are not injured yet, but the Krathax come closer every hour. They consume everything." "They have already taken so many of us," her voice broke. "The Coalition said the conditions here were impossible for military operations. How did you even land?" Nari, who had been scanning the perimeter, laughed. "Lady, these conditions are Tuesday afternoon where we come from. This planet? We've got islands worse than this back home." Lyra looked at the human in confusion. Then, hesitantly, she reached out one long-fingered hand. "May I? We Valori can share thoughts through touch. I would understand you better." Yuna nodded, and Lyra's fingers brushed against her temple. The Valori's eyes went wide, then wider. She gasped and pulled back as if burned. "Your mind," she whispered. "It's so heavy. So much survival instinct, so much adaptation, so much death." "We're not going to hurt you," Yuna said gently. "We came to help." "No, you misunderstand." Lyra looked at all the humans with new eyes. "You evolved on a world that tried to kill you every day. Your entire species is built for survival in ways we cannot comprehend. We Valori evolved on a paradise world. We have never known predators, never known scarcity, never needed to fight to live." She gestured to the ruins around them. "This is why we are losing. We don't know how to fight. We don't know how to survive like this. But you," she looked at Minho, "you know exactly how to survive this, don't you?" Minho nodded slowly. "Yes, we do." "The Krethax hunt us like animals," Lyra continued. "They use our fear against us. We huddle in this shelter and wait to die because we don't know any other way. The Coalition couldn't help because their soldiers, too, come from gentle worlds. They couldn't operate in these conditions." She looked at the humans again. "But you can." "We can," Nari confirmed. She pointed to the ruins. "How many Krethax out there?" "Thousands. They coordinate through a hive mind. They never stop, never tire, never show mercy." Taiyang's voice came through their comms from the ship. "Captain, I'm picking up movement. The Krethax know we're here. They're massing for an attack." Minho turned to his team. "Nari, defensive perimeter. Yuna, start getting the wounded ready for transport to the ship. We'll ferry them up in groups." He turned back to Lyra. "How many of your people can fight?" Lyra looked horrified. "Fight? We are not warriors. We are diplomats, scientists, artists. We have never raised a hand in violence." "That's fine," Minho said. "You don't need to fight. But I need to know who can carry supplies, who can operate communication equipment, who can help move the injured. Can your people do that?" "Yes," Lyra said, understanding dawning. "Yes, we can do those things." "Good. Because we're not just here to defend you. We're here to get all of you off this rock alive." Minho looked out at the toxic landscape, at the approaching threat. "The Krethax think they're hunting prey. They're about to learn what happens when you corner a species that evolved fighting everything." In the distance, shapes moved through the ruins, thousands of them. The Krethax swarm, coming to finish what they started. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never met their match. They had never encountered Deathworlders before. Nari checked her weapon and smiled. "Captain, permission to show these bugs what Earth thinks of their invasion?" "Permission granted," Minho said. "Humanity is officially answering the call." The Krethax came forward like a dark wave. And the humans, born of a world that tried to kill them and failed, stood their ground. Behind them, the Valori watched in wonder as the galaxy's Deathworlders prepared to do what they did best, survive the impossible and help others do the same. The battle for Threshold 7 was about to begin, and for the first time the Krethax swarm was about to experience fear. The Krethax came at dawn, though on Threshold 7, dawn was just a different shade of darkness. They moved through the ruins like insects, because that's what they were, massive chitinous creatures with too many legs and mandibles that could cut through steel. Their hive mind made them perfect hunters, coordinating their attacks with inhuman precision. They had killed thousands of Valori this way. They expected to kill thousands more. They had never fought humans before. The first wave hit the defensive perimeter that Nari's Marines had set up during the night. The Krethax crashed into positions that should have been abandoned because no species could survive in those locations. They found humans instead. Squad 3 had taken position inside a collapsed building that was still on fire. The toxic smoke would kill most species in minutes. The humans had modified their suit filters and used the smoke as cover. When the Krethax poured through expecting nothing, they ran straight into a kill zone. Plasma rifles lit up the darkness, and the lead Krethax fell before they knew what hit them. Squad 5 was dug in behind a radiation vent that was leaking enough energy to fry most life forms. The humans had lined their position with lead sheets, scavenged from the colony, and were using the radiation itself as a sensor, tracking the Krethax by the shadows they cast in the radioactive glow. The aliens never saw the ambush coming. From the horizon, Taeyang coordinated the defense like a chess master playing against a predictable opponent. The Krethax used numbers and fear. They surrounded, they overwhelmed, they made their prey panic. It worked perfectly on species that had never known predators. It failed completely against humans who had invented warfare over 10,000 years ago. Squad 2, fall back to position Echo. Taeyang's voice was calm in everyone's comms. The Krethax are trying to flank you. We'll let them think they're succeeding, then close the trap. On the ground, Nari led her squad through terrain that would break most soldiers. The gravity shifts that had stopped coalition forces. Humans adapted in real time, their inner ears adjusting, their muscles compensating. The temperature swings? Their suits were designed by people who lived in deserts and Arctic tundra. The constant earthquakes? They'd trained on fault lines back home. Contact rear, one of her Marines called. A group of Krethax had broken through and were charging their position. Nari turned, raised her rifle, and dropped 3 with precise shots. The 4th got close enough that she had to use her combat knife. She drove it into the creature's brain cluster and kicked it away, already turning to the next threat. This was what the Krethax didn't understand. Humans weren't just tough, they were aggressive. They didn't just defend, they counterattacked. They didn't just survive, they adapted and overcame. Inside the Valori shelter, Lyra watched through the security feeds in growing amazement. She saw humans doing things that should be impossible. One Marine, wounded by Krethax claws, kept fighting with 3 broken ribs. Another dragged 2 injured Valori through a kilometer of hostile terrain while fighting off attackers with one hand. A third scaled a collapsing building to set up a sniper position, making shots that required holding her breath in toxic air. "How?" Lyra whispered to Yuna, who was working in the makeshift medical bay. "How do they keep fighting?" Yuna looked up from treating a wounded Valori. Her face was drawn with exhaustion, but her hands were steady. "We're used to pain," she said simply. "Earth taught us that pain means you're still alive, and alive means you can still fight." She went back to her patient. "Your people are brave, Lyra, but you've never had to be tough. There's a difference." Outside, the Krethax adapted. Their hive mind processed the new information. These defenders were not like others. They tried their psychological attacks, projecting waves of fear and despair. It had broken every species they had encountered. It bounced off the humans, like rain off stone. Minho's voice cut through the mental assault on the command channel. "Ignore the head games. They're trying to make us scared. Anyone here scared?" "Scared I'll run out of ammunition," Nari replied. "Scared we'll miss breakfast," another Marine added. "Scared this will be over too quickly," a third chimed in. The Krethax didn't understand humor. They didn't understand that humans used jokes to cope with fear, that laughter was a weapon against despair. They only understood that their greatest weapon wasn't working. So they escalated. The swarm deployed their planet killers, massive bioorganic weapons that released clouds of engineered organisms designed to terraform entire worlds. They had used these to consume dozens of planets. The clouds spread across the battlefield, dissolving stone, corrupting the air, making the already hostile environment completely lethal. The coalition forces had retreated from these weapons. They had no defense. Dr. Yuna had been studying captured samples of the Krethax bioweapons for hours. When she saw the planet killers deploy, She didn't panic. She got excited. "Captain," her voice came through crystal clear, "those organisms, they're vulnerable to Earth bacteria. They've never encountered our biosphere before. They have no immunity." "Can you weaponize it?" Minho asked. "I already am." Yuna was working as she talked, her hands moving with practiced precision. "I'm loading canisters with a modified strain of terrestrial bacteria. It will consume their bioweapons faster than they can spread. Hyun, I need you to rig a dispersal system." From engineering, Hyun's voice was full of energy. "On it. Give me 20 minutes." 18 minutes later, the Horizon's defensive turrets began firing canisters instead of plasma. They burst over the battlefield, releasing clouds of Earth-native microorganisms. The Krethax planet killers, meeting Earth's ecosystem for the first time, began to die. The swarm faltered. For the first time in their expansion across the galaxy, their ultimate weapons were failing. More than failing, they were being turned against them. The Earth bacteria, aggressive and adaptable like everything from that terrible world, began consuming Krethax biomatter wherever it touched. "Push forward," Minho ordered. "All squads advance. Don't give them time to adapt." The humans moved, not like the defensive coalition forces waiting to react, not like the peaceful Valori hoping for mercy. They moved like what they were, persistence hunters from a world that had made them earn every day of survival. They moved like apex predators who had just found easier prey. Nari's squad cleared building after building, moving through conditions that should have stopped them. When a collapsed structure blocked their path, they climbed over it. When toxic gas filled a corridor, they held their breath and pushed through. When the gravity suddenly doubled, they kept moving, slower but unstoppable. One Marine, caught in a gravity well that would have crushed most species, crawled forward meter by meter until she could throw a grenade that cleared the position. Another, trapped under rubble with Krethax closing in, kept firing until her squad could dig her out. A third lost his helmet seal in the toxic atmosphere and held his breath for 3 minutes while making it back to safety. The Valori watched all of this with wonder and growing understanding. These humans didn't see obstacles. They saw challenges. They didn't see impossible conditions. They saw problems to solve. When the galaxy said something couldn't be done, humans asked, "Why not?" and did it anyway. As the sun set on Threshold 7, the battlefield was littered with dead Krethax. The swarm, which had never retreated from any world, pulled back to regroup. Their hive mind was trying to process what had happened. They had met something new, something dangerous. They had met Deathworlders. In the shelter, Lyra found Sergeant Nari checking her equipment for tomorrow's operations. The human was covered in injuries that should have put her in medical bay. Instead, she was cleaning her rifle and preparing for the next fight. "Why do you keep going?" Lyra asked quietly. "You're hurt. You're exhausted. You've done more than anyone could ask." Nari looked up and smiled. It was a tired smile, but genuine. "Because there are still people who need help. Because the job isn't done. Because—" She paused, thinking. "Because Earth taught us that survival isn't about being the strongest or the fastest or the smartest. It's about being too stubborn to quit." She went back to her rifle. "Tomorrow, we're going to push the Krethax off this rock completely. The day after, we'll get your people evacuated. And then we'll go find the next impossible situation and solve that too. That's what Deathworlders do." Lyra touched Nari's mind again, just for a moment. She felt the pain the human was hiding, the exhaustion, the fear. But under it all was something else. An iron determination that would not bend, would not break, would not yield. It was the legacy of a species that had survived ice ages and extinctions and 1,000 other disasters. It was the strength Earth had forged into its children, and the galaxy was about to learn what that meant. The battle lasted 3 more days. By the end, the Krethax swarm was broken. The survivors fled into space, their hive mind carrying a new piece of information that would spread across their entire species. There were hunters more dangerous than they were, but victory came with a price. Dr. Yuna stood in the Horizon's medical bay, which had been expanded into every available space on the ship. Wounded Marines lay on beds, chairs, and even the floor. Valori civilians filled the corridors, recovering from injuries and trauma. Yuna had been working for 60 hours straight, catching sleep in 10-minute intervals between surgeries. Her hands shook as she sutured another wound. She had lost count of how many procedures she had performed. The human patients were easier in some ways. Their bodies kept fighting through injuries that would kill other species. But that also meant they pushed themselves too hard, hiding pain until they collapsed. "Doctor." One of her nurses, a young Marine named Desom, touched her shoulder. "You need to rest. You're going to collapse." "I'm fine," Yuna said automatically. But her vision was blurring. She had pushed her body to its limits and beyond. Even Deathworlders had limits. The next thing she knew, she was waking up in a bed of her own, with Taeyang sitting beside her. "You've been out for 8 hours," he said gently. "The worst is over. Everyone critical is stable." "How many did we lose?" Yuna asked. It was the question that had been haunting her through every surgery. Every treatment, every desperate attempt to save lives. 3 Marines, 12 wounded, but they'll all recover, and we saved 7,800 Valori. Taeyang's voice was soft. "You did good, Yuna. 3 dead." It was a tiny number compared to what could have been lost. But each one was a person, someone who had trusted Minho's decision to answer that distress call, someone who would never go home. "Is it always like this?" Yuna asked quietly. "Does survival always cost this much?" Taeyang was quiet for a long moment. "Earth taught us to survive, but it also taught us that survival alone isn't enough. We have to make the survival mean something. Those 3 Marines died saving thousands. That means something." Before Yuna could respond, alarms blared across the ship. She sat up too fast, her head spinning. "What's happening?" "Ship's dropping out of jump space," Taeyang said, already moving toward the door. "A lot of ships." On the bridge, Captain Minho stood watching the view screen as the Galactic Coalition fleet materialized around Threshold 7. Dozens of massive warships, sleek and elegant and powerful. They had arrived expecting to find a dead colony and the Krethak swarm claiming another victory. Instead, they found the Krethaks gone and humans coordinating evacuation procedures. A communication came through. The face on the screen was crystalline, literally made of living diamond formations. Admiral Kathen of the Coalition First Fleet. His expression, as much as a crystal being could show expression, was shocked. "This is impossible," Kathen said. "How did you—" "The conditions here. Our finest troops couldn't operate in this environment." Minho, who had also been awake for most of 3 days, was not in the mood for diplomacy. "We operated just fine, Admiral. While you were declaring this colony a lost cause, we were saving it." "You are one ship!" Kathen's crystalline structure flashed with colors that might have been anger. "Against the Krethak swarm! Against conditions that stopped our entire fleet!" "Yes," Minho said simply. "We're from Earth. These conditions are normal for us." There was a long silence. Kathen seemed to be processing something his mind couldn't quite accept. "The Deathworlders," he said finally. "We thought the reports about your world were exaggerated. We thought nothing could actually evolve in such hostile conditions." "You thought wrong," Nari said from her station. She had refused to go to medical despite her injuries. "Our world made us strong, made us tough, made us too stubborn to know when to quit." She smiled. "Lucky for the Valori." Over the next hours, As coalition medical ships began taking on Valori refugees and coalition inspectors examined the battlefield, word spread through the fleet. The impossible had happened. A single Earth ship had succeeded where an armada had failed. The species from the Class 9 Deathworld had done what no one thought possible. The galaxy's understanding of humanity began to change. Ambassador Lyra stood with Captain Minho on the surface of Threshold 7, watching the evacuation. Her people were being loaded onto coalition transports, heading for safer worlds. She looked tired but grateful. "We will never forget what you did here," she said. "The coalition may have abandoned us, but Earth answered. Why? You had no obligation to us. We are strangers." Minho looked out at the ruined colony. "On Earth we have a saying, if not us, then who? If not now, then when? Someone needed help. We could provide it. That's reason enough." "But the cost," Lyra said softly. 3 of your people died. Many more are injured. Was it worth it?" "Ask the 7,000 people we saved," Minho replied. "Ask their families. Ask the children who still have futures because we decided to try." He looked at Lyra. "Earth taught us that survival is hard and death is easy. But we also learned that giving up is the only real failure. Yes, we paid a price, but the alternative was doing nothing while people died. That's not who humans are." A coalition shuttle landed near them. Out stepped a delegation of coalition officials, led by a being that looked like a floating mass of tentacles, Counselor Vex, one of the coalition's senior politicians. "Captain Minho," Vex said. His translation was sharp, clipped. "The coalition wishes to discuss your actions here." "Discuss?" Nari, who had accompanied them to the surface, sounded dangerous. "We just saved thousands of lives you wrote off as lost." "And we are grateful," Vex said, though he didn't sound grateful at all. "However, this incident raises questions, serious questions about humanity's place in the galaxy. You are from a death world. You are adapted for violence and survival in ways that other species are not. Some in the coalition worry about what this means." "It means we can help where others can't," Minho said carefully. "Is that a problem?" "It means you are dangerous," Vex said bluntly. "Your species has only been part of the galactic community for 20 years. We don't know if you can be trusted with power." "We just proved we can be trusted," Yuna said. She had joined them on the surface, still pale from exhaustion but unwilling to miss this. "We risked our lives for strangers. What more proof do you need?" "That is one incident," Vex countered. "But your history, your evolution, your culture, all of it points to a species built for conflict. What happens when Deathworlders decide they want something? Can anyone stop you?" The question hung in the air. Around them, human Marines and coalition soldiers watched the confrontation. The tension was thick enough to cut. Then Taiyang spoke up. "Every human child learns to be gentle," he said quietly. "Despite having hands that can kill, despite having minds that can plan violence, despite coming from a world that made us dangerous, we learn restraint. We learn mercy. We learn that strength without compassion is just cruelty." He looked at Vex directly. "You're asking the wrong question, Counselor. Don't ask if anyone can stop us. Ask why we stop ourselves. That's what makes us more than just survivors. That's what makes us people." Vex was silent. Around him, his delegation shifted uncomfortably. They had come expecting to intimidate. Instead, they had been given something to think about. "The coalition will vote on Earth's status," Vex said finally. "There will be restrictions, limitations. Humanity's military capabilities make many species nervous." "Let them vote," Minho said. "Let them debate and worry and make their rules. We'll follow them, because we came here to help, not to conquer." He gestured to the evacuation. "But when the next impossible crisis happens, when someone calls for help and the galaxy says it can't be done, Earth will answer again, because that's what Deathworlders do. As the Coalition delegation left, Lyra touched Minho's arm. "They're afraid of you," she said. "I can feel it in their minds. They see what you're capable of, and it terrifies them." "I know," Minho said. "But fear isn't always bad. Maybe they need to be a little afraid. Maybe that's what will make them try harder, be stronger, reach farther." He smiled. "Earth doesn't want to rule the galaxy, but maybe we can teach it how to survive." High above, the horizon waited in orbit, scarred from battle but unbroken. Inside, humans tended their wounded and prepared for whatever came next. They had proven something important, that being from a death world didn't make them monsters. It made them survivors who refused to let others become victims. The galaxy was watching now, and the galaxy was learning what it meant when Deathworlders said, "We can help." 6 months after Threshold 7, the Coalition Council gathered on the capital world of Sanctuary Prime. Representatives from 300 species filled the Great Assembly Hall, their varied forms creating a rainbow of alien life. At the center of attention was a simple human delegation: Captain Minho, Ambassador Hana, and Dr. Yuna. The vote had taken weeks of debate. Some species wanted Earth quarantined as too dangerous. Others wanted humanity welcomed as saviors. Most fell somewhere in between, uncertain what to do with these Deathworlders who had shattered every assumption about survival and strength. The final decision was a compromise. Earth would receive associate membership in the Coalition. Humans could serve in humanitarian and rescue operations, but their military expansion would be limited, and they would face strict monitoring. When the vote was announced, Minho simply nodded. Hana looked disappointed but unsurprised. Yuna seemed relieved it wasn't worse. "They're still afraid of us," Hana said quietly as they left the council chambers. "Of course they are," Minho replied. "We scared ourselves once. Took us a few wars to figure out that strength and violence aren't the same thing." He looked out at the perfect gardens of Sanctuary Prime, a world that had never known winter or famine or predators. "They'll learn. We'll show them," and show them they did. 3 months later, Dr. Yuna stood in a training facility on Earth's moon, watching a diverse group of aliens struggle through what humans would call a basic obstacle course. There was Kale, a young Valori male trying to climb a rope. There was Drix, a floating gas being learning to work with physical equipment. There was Mora, an aquatic species doing her best in a breathing apparatus. They were the first class of the Deathworld Exchange program. Aliens learning from humans. Not how to fight, but how to survive. "Remember," Yuna called out, "it's not about being the strongest. It's about adapting. When the rope is too hard to climb, find another way up. When the obstacle is too big to go over, go around or through it. Deathworld thinking isn't about muscles. It's about mindset." She watched Kale struggle for another moment, then saw his face change. He stopped trying to pull himself up by pure strength. Instead, he wrapped his legs around the rope and used his whole body. He made it to the top, exhausted but successful. "That's it," Yuna cheered. "You adapted. That's the lesson." Beside her, Ambassador Lyra smiled. The Valori diplomat had become the co-director of the program. "6 months ago, my people didn't think we could do any of this. Now look at Kale. He's not human strong, but he's learning to think like humans think." "That's the goal," Yuna said. "Not to make everyone like us, but to teach survival skills, adaptability, resilience, problem-solving under pressure." She paused. "The galaxy has a lot of smart, kind, wonderful species, but most of them never had to struggle. They don't know how to handle crisis. We do." News of the program spread. More species applied. The Coalition, initially skeptical, began to see the value. Rescue operations that had been considered too dangerous were suddenly possible with trained personnel. Colonies in harsh environments, once thought impossible, became viable with human consultation. Earth wasn't conquering the galaxy. It was teaching the galaxy how to be tougher. On the UESS Horizon, now the flagship of the new Deathworld response fleet, Captain Minho reviewed his expanded crew. 30 humans and 20 volunteers from other species who had completed the training program. They were an odd mixture, but they worked. "Sir," Taeyang said from Tactical, "we have a new distress call. Mining colony in the Helix sector. They're trapped by a collapsing neutron star. The gravitational forces are tearing the system apart." "Coalition response?" Minho asked. "They've declared it a lost cause. Too dangerous. They're writing off 3,000 miners as inevitable casualties." Taeyang looked up. "It's Threshold 7 all over again. Except this time, we have authorization to respond." Minho smiled. "Then let's go show them what Deathworlders can do. Again." But before they could jump, another message came through. This one wasn't from the Coalition. The channel was strange, using frequencies that shouldn't work. The translation was rough but clear enough. "This is the Krethak Swarm," the message said. "We acknowledge the apex species from the third world of the Sol system. We withdraw from Sector 447. We do not hunt where Deathworlders claim territory." The bridge was silent. Then Nari started laughing. "They're scared of us. The galaxy's nightmare species is actually scared of us." "Good," Hyun said from engineering. "Maybe they'll think twice before attacking peaceful colonies. Maybe word will spread. Maybe we just made the galaxy a little bit safer without firing a shot." Minho looked at his crew. Humans and aliens, working together, each bringing their strengths. The aliens brought advanced technology, scientific knowledge, diplomatic skills. The humans brought something else, the stubborn refusal to accept that any problem was truly impossible. "Set course for the Helix sector," he ordered. "Maximum speed. Those miners are going to live even if we have to fly through a collapsing star system to save them." Back on Earth, at the United Nations headquarters, humanity debated its future. Some wanted more ships, more expansion, more influence. Others wanted to stay isolated, afraid of becoming too involved in galactic politics. In the end, they chose a middle path. Earth would help, but on their own terms. They would teach but not conquer. They would rescue but not rule. They would show the galaxy that being from a death world didn't make you a monster. It made you someone who understood that survival was precious and worth fighting for. On Sanctuary Prime, Ambassador Lyra gave a speech to the Coalition Council that would be remembered for generations. She spoke about watching humans fight through impossible conditions, about seeing them risk everything for strangers, about learning that strength without compassion was just brutality, but compassion without strength was just good intentions. "The Deathworlders scared us," she said, "and maybe they should. But we should also be grateful for them. Because when the galaxy faces something impossible, when we all say it cannot be done, Earth asks, why not? And does it anyway. That's not dangerous. That's hope." The vote to expand humanity's role in the Coalition passed by a narrow margin. Not everyone was convinced, but enough were willing to try. On the horizon, racing toward another impossible rescue, Captain Minho recorded a message to send back to Earth. It would take weeks to arrive, but he knew people would want to hear it. "This is Captain Minho of the UESS Horizon. We're currently heading into a situation the Coalition says is certain death. Collapsing star, extreme gravity, radiation that can melt steel. By every reasonable measure, this mission is impossible." He paused, allowing himself a small smile. But then again, every species in the galaxy thinks Earth itself is impossible. They look at our world, with its disasters and diseases and deadly life, and they can't understand how anything survived there, let alone thrived. They don't understand that impossible is just another word for hasn't been done yet. Behind him, his crew worked at their stations. Tai Yang calculated jump coordinates through gravitational chaos. Nari prepped rescue equipment. Yuna organized medical supplies. Hyun made impossible modifications to the engines. Aliens and humans together, united by a simple idea. Someone needed help, and they could provide it. Earth didn't make us perfect, Minho continued. It didn't make us invincible. It didn't even make us the smartest or strongest species in the galaxy. What it made us is stubborn. It made us adapt. It made us look at impossible situations and refuse to give up. The horizon dropped into jump space, racing toward another world that needed Deathworlders. So this is our place in the galaxy. When everyone else says it can't be done, when the odds are impossible and the situation is hopeless, that's when you call Earth. That's when you call Deathworlders, because we're too stubborn to know when to quit, and we're too compassionate to leave people behind. Minho looked at his crew one more time. They were ready. They were always ready. We came from a world that tried to kill us every day. We survived, we learned, we grew strong, and now we use that strength to help others do the same. That's not something to fear. That's something to be proud of. He ended the recording and turned to his crew. All right, people. Let's do what Deathworlders do best. Let's make impossible look easy. The horizon emerged from jump space into a nightmare of collapsing gravity and stellar radiation. But inside the ship, humans and aliens worked together with calm efficiency. They had trained for this. They had learned from each other. They were ready. Below, 3,000 miners waited in the darkness, praying for rescue that the galaxy said wouldn't come. They were about to learn what happened when Earth answered the call. They were about to learn what Deathworlders could do. The message spread across the galaxy at light speed, carried by quantum communication and whispered in alien languages. When the impossible happens, when hope seems lost, when the galaxy says it cannot be done, there is one species that will answer: the Deathworlders from Earth. And they never, ever quit. The stars shone above Threshold 7, above Sanctuary Prime, above Earth itself. And in the darkness between them, ships bearing humanity's flag raced toward those who needed help, ready to prove once again that impossible was just another challenge to overcome. The age of Deathworlders had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.